What is up, everybody? Welcome into this edition of the Transfer Portal Tracker here on Warchant.com, brought to you by our good friends over at Cummins, shop.cummins.com. There's like 10 more shopping days left. Shop.cummins.com, promo code TAILGATE, saves you 10%. We're here to talk about transfers, obviously, here, Jeff. It's been kind of slow, but maybe this is indicative of what's out there and the themes and the storylines. But Malcolm Ray, who played in all 13 games for the undefeated Florida State Seminoles, tweeted the other day his intentions to enter the portal. Now, he hasn't officially done so, but this is a guy that was part of your long-term plans, you would assume, and it seems a bit interesting to see him tweet this news out at this juncture of the portal season.
It does, Aslan. I never know what to believe anymore. I think kids see social media as an avenue by which to negotiate with the collectives. I see this all over the country, that they'll go public and they'll try to curry some sort of sympathy or empathy for their cause. I don't know that it works. I don't think it's necessarily a great negotiating plan. I don't know if that's what he was doing here, but I find it interesting. I also know that the market's very different than what the kids understand it to be, and I'm seeing that happen at a lot of places as well. So I think kids believe there's money out there that's not out there. Malcolm Ray, as you correctly pointed out, he played in every game this year. He was an integral part of their success, at least in terms of a depth piece. I always thought Malcolm played well, and you didn't really rely on Malcolm to be a devastating interior rusher. He didn't really need to be a guy that changed the game for you, but he was a nice piece. They could use him. He's a guy against the run you felt very good about with that size on the interior. So I'm kind of surprised to see it because I think they were expecting Malcolm Ray to come back. Then again, I don't really know what is quietly going on behind the scenes right now. There are a lot of names that are very interested in coming to Florida State. So this could be a reflection of that as well.
You know, we've seen it in movies. The United States government will not negotiate with terrorists. We've seen some of the people involved in, funding these successful enterprises at universities say that they're not going to use social media to negotiate. But I guess for the players, though, this is their only real avenue to try to create leverage. Can you create leverage in these situations, or when these entities, these collectives explicitly say we will not, negotiate over social media, do you lose your ability to leverage negotiations by going this route, if in case this is the reason why Malcolm has decided to go to Twitter with his news?
I think if the collective is being run responsibly and they have a game plan moving forward, they're not going to allow a player to reset the market because they're complaining on social media that they aren't getting the offers that they'd like to receive. I think there's a game plan going in about roster retention, an understanding of what's going to be necessary with an incoming class, especially if you have an incoming class of superstars. You have to delegate your funds appropriately, and you can't give every kid on this team what they want, especially if you're going to have some superstars that potentially want to come in. And so I think that we all have to kind of sit back, and players don't do this necessarily because it's their future, and obviously they want their money right now. But in terms of the fan base and the way that we view this and the way that we cover this, I think it's probably best to take a step back and just watch all of this play out before you, understanding that the finished product is going to be something very different. There are going to be cases where a player tries to negotiate publicly and says he would like more money and that he intends to enter the transfer portal, and that period will come and go, Aslan, and they'll still be on this football team. There will be times where you think a player is a lock to be back on your roster, and then in the last moment, they announce that they're going to enter the transfer portal. There are conversations being had on a daily basis between these collectives. Obviously, coaches sit down and talk to players about their roles as well. Sometimes players don't always hear what they want to hear, and they're emotional. You're dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. Sometimes it can be a difficult moment to be told something that you don't want to hear. So I think it takes a little bit of time to step back and realize, okay, what I'm hearing today is not necessarily the news of tomorrow. It's not necessarily the news of next week. At the same time, what I think is the reality may also shift in this offseason. So it's a volatile time. It's certainly fun for us to cover, but every day there's another name and another whisper and another rumor. It is awfully hard to pin any of this down because these are kids, and kids are emotional and reactionary.
I want to follow up on this with you, though, Jeff. I mean, you did mention that this might indicate that there's other stars out there, other superstars that could be involved in the plans. You kind of had that this year, though. You had Fisk, you had Lovett, and you had Malcolm Ray. And like, Malcolm Ray has a role to fill on this team, even if you were to bring in another star defensive interior lineman. So still not good news ultimately here if you're trying to configure your roster to make another run at things, right?
Yeah, and I don't, and again, I don't want to speak for Malcolm Ray, but like, I don't know that situation. What if Farmer comes back and Daryl Jackson comes back, and now you have your two interior guys, and Malcolm thought he was going to be the man? Well, you're not going to be the man when Daryl Jackson's here. You're not going to be the man if Farmer is here. So I don't know that that's the case, but you do factor in all these things. Well, what was it he wanted? What did he think he was going to be dependent on for? Who did he think he was within this grouping on the depth chart? But it's not good to lose a guy that started all 13 or played in all 13 games for you and was a nice depth piece. I mean, you want that kind of size and you want lots of it. Offensive and defensive line, we know this is where these games are won. You can never have enough big guys. That is an area of the football field where a lot of people suffer from injury. You want to have this kind of depth. You hate to see him go. I just know that whenever I begin to panic, if I put my fan hat on for a second and go, oh, no, we can't lose this guy, we can't lose that guy. Well, just keep in mind, we don't know what's coming down the pike with some other guys at other schools right about now who are maybe quietly inquiring about the possibilities of playing at Florida State. For every guy that goes public and is very out front with their recruitment or their desire to play or their desire for more money or whatever it might be, there are a lot of other guys who handle this behind the scenes and don't do so publicly, and Florida State has to consider all of that.
Last thing on the way out, I mean, you mentioned you sound a little bit more optimistic than I am right now. You've got sources. I just go with my gut and what Twitter tells me. But you look at these lists of available players right now, and not a lot of these available players seem to be near the caliber of player that you're probably going to lose in Keon Coleman's case, Jared Verse's case, etc. You remain optimistic, hopeful that those sort of players will arrive here in the portal in this first window before January 2nd?
Well, I don't know that you're going to find a Keon Coleman caliber proven receiver from college football, but you obviously have some kids on this team that we think can fill the role. I mean, I do have high expectations for Hakeem Williams and Destin Hill and maybe a Vendravius Jacobs. Maybe you end up flipping a certain big name wide receiver that we've all talked about ad nauseum right now that's verbally committed to Ohio State. There are some big names out there, so we'll see. I go kind of position by position with this sort of stuff. Will you find another Jared Verse, a first-round draft pick at defensive end? Probably not. Can you find somebody, though, that is a plus player for you at that position? I believe so. Yeah, I think that's out there. It's hard to find elite difference makers. Florida State has been very, very savvy. They've probably been better than almost everybody in the country when it comes to bringing in legitimate superstars, in particular at defensive end. You think about what Jermaine Johnson was or Keir Thomas was, and obviously what Jared Verse was. It's hard to sustain that. That's why you have to recruit really well in the high school ranks. We've seen an uptick in that now. But if you're gonna talk about replacing production at an elite level, like an NFL level, no, I don't think Florida State can sustain that through the portal.
I was always hoping you could. Maybe I'm being proven wrong. Jeff Cameron's got a show from 1 to 3 o'clock, the Jeff Cameron Show. Tune in. He's got more thoughts on this entire transfer portal season. Jeff, thanks for taking time out to do this.
Thanks, brother. Be good, man.
Everybody, you've been watching the Transfer Portal Tracker presented by and powered by Cummins here on Warchant.com.